Okay, so I figured we did a year of the 12 steps and then we did a year on different topics. So now we're going to go back and do the 12 steps again because we have to do them all over again because that's what we do. So let's, before we get into the 12 steps though, or step one, I should say, let's talk a little bit about why we're even here. Why are we here? So I'm going to use the big book of AA because, as you know, that is the foundation of all 12-step programs and is how Bill and the first 100 recovered and is the reason that you and I are sitting on this Zoom today. So basically, if you look at the preface of the forwards, it talks about the history of AA a little bit. And they're very clear about the fact that we'll change up the stories, but we're not going to change the basic text of this book. Why? For a few reasons. Number one, because it worked. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Number two, because there are sections, and the whole thing you could argue, but there are sections, for example, like, sorry, I'm blanking on the title of the chapter, how it works, where Bill said it came out in like a continuous flow, like divine dictation. So we're not going to tamper with something that's divinely dictated. The other risk of tampering with the original is that it could mirror what has happened in many 12-step programs over the last, half century, where basically you had, when this program started, it officially started in 1934 when Bill came to see Dr. Bob. But when they started working with the first 100, this program was completely 100% spiritual / God-based, and it still is. However, over time, which we've talked about, and they talk about it in this book also, over time, sorry, I'm getting a little distracted by people coming in, but that is fine. More the merrier. Amazing. So basically, you have people who are working in a very hardcore God-centered spiritual solution with a very specific way of doing it, which is, when they were working with Bill and Bob were working with the first 100, these guys would go to Akron and stay there for weeks. They'd stay in Bob's house or they'd stay in somebody else's house, and they would work these guys through the 12 steps over a weekend. And they would get these guys, they were like, get on your knees. We're going to do this. We're going to write everything out. You're turning your will and your life over to God. It was hardcore. They did not mess around and they did not waste time. There was none of that, like, you do a step a year or like, you do your fourth step when your heart tells you. No, they had no time for that. They're like, do you want to not die? Great. Let's do the steps. Let's go. And so within a matter of sometimes a weekend, sometimes, a matter of weeks, these people would have major spiritual experiences, profound experiences. And then the Akron guys would say, okay, off you go home, go start a group, which is how AA started, with these people having very profound, fast spiritual experiences that continued growing because they had to maintain it. So there was no playing around. There was no other modalities. There was no, group therapy or, TikTok reels that gave you a quick little hit. There was none of that. It was, you come to us, we show you how to do this. You turn your life over to God and God runs the show forever. You down? And if you're in, you're in. And if you're not, have fun drinking. We'll see you in 6 months after you're in the hospital again. That was very cut and dry. So in the 50s, 60s, I'd say 60s, 70s, with the advent of rehabs and detox centers, because before that, when somebody was an alcoholic, they would go to a hospital. They put them in the psych ward. Like, that was it. That was all you had. And they'd lock you up. So most people did not want to be locked up because even though, yes, they were crazy, this was actually a very fixable medical issue if you just get sober and have a spiritual experience. Just getting sober is not the solution, but having spiritual experience is. So, sorry, 1 second. So the problem was not a problem. Detox centers and rehabs have saved people's lives. And when you had things like the Betty Ford Clinic and all these other, and you had like celebrities who were starting to go to rehab, which they still do. Apparently it's like some kind of rite of passage. So they started introducing other modalities, which I'm not discrediting any other modality to support people's recovery. Those modalities, however, and I'm talking about, group therapy, talk therapy, spa type stuff, yoga, like all of these things are amazing tools, but they are not recovery. They are supports for a recovery. And the problem was that some of these places, the 12 steps kind of got watered down and then watered out to the point where people didn't even know about working the 12 steps. Like they'd hand people a big book, but nobody was required to read it. It was just like, yeah, this is what AA is, and maybe you'll go to meetings. And as such, you had people then coming out of these places and going to meetings and not talking about a solution. They're just talking about not drinking. So you could go to meetings, and you can still go to meetings where, people are like, I've been sober for 35 years and I hate my wife, but I didn't drink today, and for a lot of people, that might be enough. But for a real alcoholic, not drinking just means signing up for a really, really uncomfortable life. It just means that there's no buffer. And so there was a loss of this wisdom for many, many years. There were people who stuck to it, but it was sort of interpreted as is comfortable for you. So like I said, there are people who are like, you work a step a year. Phil and Bob didn't do that. Those guys didn't do that. And they talk about in the preface that they had a 75% success rate first round. And then everybody else, the final 25% stragglers got it together eventually. That's insane. A 75% success rate. That's like saying a 75% success rate for like chemotherapy. Like, you're going to live if you take this medication. If you look now at the percentages in most 12-step programs, you're lucky if you've got a 5% success rate. And you know why? Because they're not doing this. That's why. I say it without judgment, because when I first got into OA, I went to meetings where people talked about food plans and weight loss and, weighing and measuring their food, or, stood up and talked about what their weight loss was and they were maintaining it and how long, and abstinence lengths. All of those things are relevant, but just like the talk therapy and the yoga, they are supports for actual recovery, which is the 12 steps. And it's interesting because when Roseanne started OA, I think it was either 1961 or 1963. I can never remember. But she was this like spunky Jewish lady out in Los Angeles. And she was eating. She had a few kids at home, 1 or 2 kids at home. And she ended up going to a Gamblers Anonymous meeting with her husband and a guy that they knew. And she's sitting in this meeting and going like, hey, this sounds like what I do with food. And so it inspired her to start working the program, or started creating OA and creating these meetings. Interestingly, OA got quickly warped because you had people, when you went to meetings in those sort of startup years, they handed you a food plan and said, this is OA, like, do this. And you had Roseanne, who is clearly one of us, who decided she wanted to rewrite the 12 steps for OA, which is adorable. And there's a reason why years down the road, yes, and she did have recovery. She did have physical recovery, but years down the road, and this is the founder of OA, guys, she relapsed. And they ended up like having her resign from her positions in like world service. Like, can you imagine being the founder? Why? Because when you're working a program that is a food plan and weight loss and abstinence and those things, you're not in recovery. You're using tools of recovery, but you're not recovering, because recovery only happens when you work the 12 steps. And let me explain that. Okay. So in the doctor's opinion, which we've looked through before, Dr. William Silkworth, who was one of the doctor at Towns Hospital in New York, who really helped these early alcoholics get sober, including Bill. He explains the alcoholic condition perfectly in this one sentence that is my favorite sentence in the entire book. And you've probably heard say this 1,000 billion times, and I will say it 1,000 billion more times because it is the thing. It is what we're dealing with. Okay. So if you look on page, here we go, XXVIII. I I wish I could tell you what number that actually is, but it's in the Roman numeral XXVIII. I probably could if I sat down and like Googled it or something or AI'd it, but I don't care. So just XXVIII. Okay. So let's go down to the bottom paragraph in the doctor's opinion of XXVIII. Okay. And I'm going to read you this paragraph. Men and women, it starts men and women. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol, right? I don't know many people who like drink vodka because they like the taste. You know what I mean? Like people drink vodka because it gives you that warm, fuzzy feeling after you drink it, right? Maybe somebody likes the taste of vodka. I don't know. But the point is, we're not eating these things. We're not drinking because it's delicious. Food, however, is interesting because it is delicious and it gives an effect. And that deliciousness is also an effect. Okay. So we drink essentially, of course, Jules coming in telling us it's XXVIII is 28. Okay. Thank you, Jules. Yes. Anyway, yeah, for those of us who, the British have to come explain to the Americans how, Roman numerals work. So anyway, basically we eat because of an effect. Number one, we need to eat to live. So fine. But most of us are not eating to live. When we eat compulsively, we're eating for an effect. What's that effect? Number one, the physical sensation of the food, whether that's crunchy, salty, salt, sweet, cold, whatever it is. So that's already one effect, right? Then there's the physical act of eating, which is a distraction. And it's when you eat, your breathing slows down. So your body gets calm. And then when you're full, number one, there's a feeling of satiety and calmness. And then when you eat past fullness, it's so uncomfortable, you can't think of anything else. So eating really is an effect, right? It takes us out of whatever it is we're in that moment. It's giving us something, an effect. And I'm not talking about when you sit down and have dinner because you're hungry and it's time to eat dinner. I'm talking about compulsive eating. Or on the other hand, restricting, right? Because we're going to talk about that too. Not eating also gives us an effect. For those of us who have experience with restriction, it's how high do you get from the control, right? The feeling of hunger sometimes can feel really good, especially for someone like me who comes from a history of compulsive eating. When I'm not eating, when I'm restricting, then it's like, oh, look at me. Look at how great I am. There's a high that comes from being hungry, consistently hungry. The attention that people get. I remember when I was really thin after I got into OA, that's a whole other story. And I remember people coming up to me and being like, are you okay? Like, cause I was way too thin. Girl, I loved it. I loved when people came over and said that to me. Number one, people are paying attention to me. Yay. Number two, it means I'm like too thin. It means there's drama. It means there's something going on. It means, and plus like, look at how I was before. Look what I can do now. Like there is also an effect that comes from restricting. So both things, whether compulsively eating, restricting, bulimia also. I have a history of bulimia. Some people don't go there and God bless you. For someone like me, I enjoyed binging and purging because I had the illusion of control. It was an intense physical sensation. And when I'm numbed, having an intense physical sensation makes me feel like I'm alive. Okay. And there's also the feeling that, oh, good, I can eat whatever I want and not gain weight, which was bullshit. But my point is that it's a game you're playing in your own head that takes you out of reality in some way, whether I'm counting calories or looking at my body or whatever it is. These games we all play with food have an effect. And the effect is I'm not here right now. And I don't want to be here right now. So I'm going to do a thing that makes me not here right now. Okay. However that looks for you. Great. The sensation they're talking about is that I'm not here right now. I'm somewhere else. I want to feel better. Okay. Is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious. So yeah, I know it's not good that I'm throwing up everything I eat. I know that. Most normal people don't do that. They cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. So yes, I know it's not good for me to throw up everything I eat, but do you know what it's like for me when I don't throw up? Like this is actually healthier for me. This is better for me that I do this. These are the stories we tell ourselves in order to justify the choices we're making. Whether it's, I bought these things for the kids for Easter or whatever, and I ate half of it, but now since I ate half of it, I might as well eat the whole thing and I'll get more tomorrow so the kids have it. Like, these are the games we play, and we know inside that it's wrong, but we also know we can't not, so we tell ourselves stories to justify what we're doing, right? I should say I justify. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. Think about that. I know people who binged and purged for like 20, 30 years, right? They've destroyed the enamel in their teeth. Their esophagus is all tore up. Like, their digestive system is a mess. They're reliant on laxatives now in order to keep things moving. Like, but to them, they're like, this is the only option for me. This is the only possible option I have. And to be honest, they're not wrong. Because if you don't have a program of recovery, what else are you going to do? So to them, it's the only normal option, right? The idea of stopping these things is horrifying. Now, my favorite sentence, ready? They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks which they see others taking with impunity. Ah, God, I love this sentence so much. Okay, so please note the sequence of this sentence. And I've said this before, and if you've heard me say it, too bad, I'm saying it again, because it's still true. They do not say that they drink and then they are restless. They say they are restless, irritable, and discontent, and then they drink. Because my default setting as an addict is restless, irritable, and discontent. I'm using food to make myself not feel that way anymore. It's like blinking. If I try to hold my eyes open from blinking, the discomfort of not blinking is going to be such that I will have to blink eventually. It's the same thing. I'm sitting here trying not to blink, and I'm so uncomfortable that I have to go and blink. As addicts without a spiritual program, we are physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually uncomfortable at all waking hours of the day. And the only way to take the edge off is to use. What happens is, because of the physical factor in our bodies, we have an addictive response, right? He uses the word allergy, which is a hypersensitivity to a substance, which kicks off the phenomenon of craving. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But the point is, we think the problem is our craving. We don't realize that we've been completely distracted by a bright, shiny problem over here. So when you get into OA like I did, and get abstinent after 2 years like I did, and I get thin like I did, the problem's solved, right? Because my problem was that I couldn't stop eating, that I was throwing up, that I was doing whatever. Problem solved. Everything's fine, right? So why, when I was at my thinnest, when I literally had just come home from Armani, where I walked down Madison Avenue and was like, I'm going to try on that gown. And then I tried it on and I looked fire. Okay. And then I come home and I'm so angry that I have to walk my mother's dog that I yank the leash so hard she hits her head on a car. Why? I should be the happiest person in the world. My life should be like a musical number. There is no reason that I should be so uncomfortable in my own skin. I have everything I ever wanted. You know why? Because I am still sick. I just took my medication away. The restless, irritable, and discontent did not go away. I just stopped medicating it. Okay, I really want to be clear about this, because a lot of people come in and say, my problem is that I'm eating, my problem is that I'm fat, my problem is that I'm not eating, my problem is that I'm throwing up. That is not your problem. That is your solution. Okay, so when we take that away, we need something else to take care of the real problem, which is the restless, irritable, and discontent. Because if we don't, we are trying not to blink, which means that eventually you will blink again. It's really as simple as that. Because if I don't have another solution to my actual problem, I will go back to the solution that I know works, even if it causes me problems, because I can't differentiate the true from the false, right? And getting caught up in that addiction is also a distraction, because I don't have to deal with things while I'm cleaning up my life, or while I'm too lost in addiction, I can't deal with anything. I can't deal with paying bills. I can't deal with talking to my kids' teachers. I can't deal with getting the tires changed. That's also a distraction. That has an effect also. So eventually we have to get to the point where we are the solution we have hurts enough that we're willing to give it up for something else. For some people like me, I was lucky enough to walk into my first meeting at 19, 20, whatever, and get abstinent at 22. Some people walk in. I know somebody who came in at like 75 and she got abstinent at 75. I don't know if she's still living, but I know she was there when she was 80 and she was still abstinent. And she talked about how grateful she is to be able to, have the twilight years spent in recovery. But she also talked about how her relationship with her kids is strained because she raised them using. This is it, folks. So the fact is, it doesn't matter when you get it. The fact is that if you have this problem and you use this solution, you use food as your solution, you haven't fixed the problem. So what did they say? So we see other people eating normally, right? Like we go to restaurants, we see, like, have you ever seen someone eat a piece of cake and they like leave half of it? They're like, oh, it's too rich. And I'm like, I'm personally offended by that. Like, excuse me? You're going to leave half of that fucking cake on the table? What are you doing? Like, no. So number one, I'm a freak because I'm waiting for them to go to the bathroom so I can polish off their cake. Number two, I should be able to do that because in every other way, I'm pretty much, I like to tell myself I'm a normal person, but you know what I mean? Like I can basically function as a normal person. So why this time I can just do what that person did. I'll just have half of it. It never works. It never goes. That experiment consistently fails. But because I'm an addict, I tell myself the story of, no, this time it's fine. It's totally fine. The scary part is when it does work. When it's like, no, this time I'm fine. And then it is fine. And then I start telling myself that it's fine. And then 2 weeks later, I'm like, wait, why am it worked before. This is what we do. We end up blinking every time. It may not happen the first time, but it will happen. Okay. So after they have succumbed to the desire again, because the desire, until you get the physical craving out of your system, the desire comes up again and again. And even after it's out of your system, if I don't have other tools, when life gets hard, my impulse is going to be like, go check out, go numb out. Okay. And as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, and he talks earlier about the allergy, this hypersensitivity to a substance or a feeling, by the way. You may not have an addiction to an actual food. I'm not here to tell anybody what their experience with food is. For me personally, I don't eat flour or sugar. I should say white flour and sugar, right? So like those are my crack. So I don't eat them. But you better believe that I get triggered when I feel like I'm a little fuller than I want to be. Like even that feeling can be triggering for me. Even that can like flip a switch in my head. So it's not always just the actual food. Sometimes it's a behavior around food. It's a hypersensitivity and a reaction to something food related. Okay. Because I come from the school of you're addicted to everything. You have to eat like this. This is how it's done. And I think for 22-year-old me, I absolutely needed that because I had no boundaries around food at all. I didn't understand how to eat a meal. Like I didn't understand what meals were. Like you just eat all day. So I'm not discrediting anyone who chooses that as their sort of go-to as recovery. If it works for you, please use it. I want you to have be happy, joyous, and free. For me personally, though, it's not just I don't eat those things and that's it. It's all of those other behaviors and games that I play around it. So anyway, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. So, okay, so I've tried not to blink and then I blink and I'm like, fuck, I blinked again. Okay, I'm going to keep my eyes open. It's not going to happen next time. This is what we do, right? Like for me, I remember living in Florida, calling out sick to my dream job, going to the convenience store across the street, buying myself food, eating it, purging, and saying to myself, I feel disgusting. I'm never doing this again, ever. 10 minutes later, I got up, left my apartment, and went back to the convenience store for more food. Like this is what we do. You know what I mean? And by the way, this doesn't just have to do with food. I wanted to put that out there also, because not everybody who comes to these rooms is a compulsive overeater who is coming from a large weight. There are people who come here who are actually grossly underweight or who have never had a problem with their weight, just the real estate that food is taking up in their head. So I really want to name that, because there are people who come in and they're like, I never had a weight problem, so do I belong here? If food takes up any real estate in your head beyond just what my meal is today, you belong here. It's a desire to stop eating compulsively. Okay. So just making that clear. And you belong here even if your food plan looks different from other people's food plans. Just saying that also, because a food plan is not a qualifier for whether or not you should be in OA. The qualification for OA is a desire to stop eating compulsively, full stop. The end. Okay. Right. So, what I was saying. So it's not just about what you're eating or not eating. It also, and especially as women, it also has to do with the body obsession. This idea of, oh, like I've gotten to this weight, but I feel like I could probably lose more, or I need to work out harder, or I need to, it's all body weight, food control, all of it, all of those, for me, I had to create abstinence around exercise because I will use it to abuse myself, because I can't do intensive exercise without it clicking on this switch in my head going, okay, I'm going to, train really hard and I'm going to lose this weight and I'm going to be this and I'm going to be, cut, whatever, like exhibit A, like a normal person would be like, oh, I'm going to start jogging. It's good for me. I went from not running to running a half marathon in 11 weeks and ending up in the hospital with an IV in my arm. Like that just tells you everything you need to know. So it's not just because, and I was in relapse, so it was weight control. But the point is, I wasn't a newbie to recovery at this point. Like I had long-term abstinence. So this had nothing to do with food and everything to do with that addict thinking of there's still something I need to change. There's still something, this body and weight obsession, because there's also something really high about being on a diet and seeing results and that same restricting. And then people say something and, oh, you look great. Like all of those things are also an addiction. And it's really hard because we're fed this stuff. I don't mean physically. I mean, fed these stories all the time about how, it's amazing. It's like eat, but don't indulge. Enjoy, but not too much. It's all of these things. And if you own a phone or a computer or a television, I give you 30 seconds before someone tells you how you're supposed to look. 30 seconds. All you have to do, look like her. And if you don't, you're completely unworthy and disgusting. The problem is that woman, there are like 4 of her on planet Earth. But we're taught to look like that. And we all believe it because everybody believes it. It's real. It's a real thing. And it's also an addiction. And that for me has been the final frontier, not just the food. The food was the first 20 years of my life. Now I got into program when I was 19, 20. I'm 44 now. Now it's really not about food. Now it's all that bullshit in my head about what I'm supposed to look like, how small I can be, how fit I am. And because I ate for so long on a weighed and measured food plan, and this is what I ate. Like now I do things a little bit differently. So it's like serving sizes and like that can also tip over into an addiction. So I really want to name all these things because even though it's called Overeaters Anonymous, it's not just for overeaters. It's for anyone with a desire to stop eating compulsively. And that includes people who are eating to lose weight. That includes people who are not eating to lose weight or compulsive exercisers. All of those things fit under that umbrella. Okay. And all of those things kick off that phenomenon of craving. It just might look different. Okay. This is repeated over and over. And unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope of his recovery. That sentence right there is the key. Because think about it. If I have a problem up here with my restless, irritable, and discontent that I am medicating with food or not eating or with exercise or whatever the thing is, and then I take that thing away, I still have this going on. So clearly it has to be something that has nothing to do with food that gets in here. And the word psychic, they're talking about like a mental moral change. Basically they talk about the spiritual experience. They define it as a personality change. In the back of the book on page 567, spiritual experience, the appendix, I invite you to read it. But they basically talk about They define it as this term spiritual experience and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book, which upon careful reading shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself among us in various forms. So that whole thing over there was basically to say, like, this is what a spiritual experience it is. Do the work. You'll have it either overnight or you'll have it over the course of your life, but just that's the solution. Okay. So what they're basically saying is you don't have a food problem. You have a mind problem. That's your problem. So you can take the food away, but your mind is still going to get you in trouble. So we need to deal with the mind. And since a mind cannot cure itself, just like a cancer cell cannot not give itself cancer, we need something outside of our minds to come in and fix our minds. So I will repeat that. That for me, and from what I understand from people who came before me, is why talk therapy does not cure addiction. It can be a support for addiction. Absolutely. I've gone to talk therapy. I know people who go to talk therapy. It helps with issues that come up in recovery, but you cannot use your own mind to convince itself to not be an addict, because it's so much more than just what you're thinking. So what do I have to do? I need something outside of me to come in and fix my mind and fix my thinking so that the need for food goes away, because there's nothing to fix that. There's nothing to take the edge off. So what they're really saying is you got to find another way to live, man, because the way you're living is leading you into addiction. I didn't get that for a really long time. I thought I came into this program thinking, okay, I'm going to get abstinent, whatever that was at the time. I'm going to lose a lot of weight. And I was in my early 20s, right? So I'm going to be young, thin, and pretty. And I will then have license to behave however I want. And everything will be great. Everything will be fine. I will finally feel comfortable in my skin. I'll feel comfortable around people. I'll have a boyfriend, hopefully soon a husband, and my life will look like a normal person's life and I will be fine. Joke was on me because I lost the weight. I was more uncomfortable in my own skin than I had ever been in my life, because at least, first of all, I had an emotional buffer with the food and I had a physical buffer with the weight. I didn't have to let people get close because I intuitively knew that I was the type that would have slept with everyone because I was totally addicted to male attention. You throw me a scrap of attention, I'm yours. So I totally understood that piece of myself on a subconscious level. I didn't understand it. Obviously, I couldn't have verbalized it, but I was like, if I looked like her, I would have had like 3 abortions by the time high school was over. Like, no question. And you think I'm exact, like, no question. Like, I would have been that girl that everyone's like, she's such a slut. I wanted people to think I was a slut. Okay. I wanted to be seen as desirable. So, but the point is, I knew that keeping weight on subconsciously would protect me from that, because I had been told already that if you're fat, you're completely undesirable. And I took myself out of that equation while pining for someone to love me. Okay. So I got thin. I had lots of male attention, which I abused for a while and then, like, figured it out a little bit. Got married to a wonderful man to whom I'm still married almost 19 years. And the credits of my life were supposed to roll. I got it all together, right? I'm thin now. I got a man. That's it. I got it. 4 years after I got married, I was on the brink of divorce. And I had this sense that it wasn't him. Like, he wasn't perfect. He's, he married to another human, but like, he wasn't the problem. Like, he was supposed to make me feel better and he didn't. He was supposed to make me feel secure and whole, but he didn't do that. He wasn't doing his job. And I remember at the time saying to someone, I have this sense that if I get divorced now, you and I are going to be having this conversation in 5 years about husband number 2. Like, it will still be me. So, and it was around that time, I had already gotten in touch with these people, but it was not until after I got married that I really took it seriously, because I got into recovery so I could pass as, psychologically healthy enough to be marriageable. Like I could fool people into thinking I was normal. And then once I got married, I was like, oh, I'm married now, it's fine. And then like full crazy came out. But at that point, I was like, no, I don't think I can live like this. I just don't think I can. And that was when I got connected to these people who in AA who had learned, they're called Big Book Step Study. And they started in the 90s in Massachusetts, which is where I was living at the time. And they basically had the same experience I did, where they were going to open AA meetings and hearing like, I've been sober for 30 years. I'm miserable. I hate my life. I don't pay my bills, and I'm getting sued, but I didn't drink today. And they're like, there's got to be more to it than this, right? Like I'm doing this to not drink. Like that's the goal. That sounds miserable. So they ended up connecting with some of the guys who were like sponsees of Bill and sponsees of Bill. And that first 100 group, because it was still the 90s. Some of those guys are still alive, right? So these guys, these Massachusetts guys and women got together and basically started doing like this. So some of you know that I am an Orthodox Jew. I wasn't raised an Orthodox Jew, but within Orthodox Judaism, there are a variety, it's a wide spectrum. You have people who are a little more chill, and you have the ultra Orthodox, right? So in Hebrew, we call them the Haredim, right? These guys are the Haredim of the Big Book, okay? These are the ultra Orthodox Big Book guys. They don't fuck around because they're like, letting this get watered down means that we don't have a solution. We just have meetings. Meetings are great and we need them, but that's not the solution. I could never go to a meeting in my life, but if I have this and I'm a sponsor and I'm being of service and sponsoring people, I'm okay. So, I mean, they talk about this. There were guys who got sober in AA, like in the early 30s, and then World War II broke out. And these guys went and fought in Europe after getting sober in AA. They didn't have meetings. They're not like sitting there in like, the trenches at Normandy having an AA meeting. They're not. They're sitting there, shooting. But they stayed sober because you don't need meetings. You do need meetings, but meetings are not the solution. That's what I'm saying. Okay. So these guys are super Haredi and they're like, hi, this is it. This is the only thing you need to be doing. You don't need to be, doing like kumbaya, holding hands. You don't need to be saying how long your sobriety is. You don't need any of that. They're nice, but that's not recovery. Meetings are not recovery. And those are the people who taught me how to work the 12 steps. They came in and they're like, we're not fucking around here. When we say God, we mean God. We don't mean like, people come in and they say, come up with a higher power of your understanding. So people are like, okay, it's the doorknob. You know what? If that gets you in the door, literally and figuratively, by all means. But if in 5 years from now, if you still say it's the doorknob, we have a problem. Okay? I'm not telling you what God is. It's not my department. I have no idea what God is. I've been in the God business for 20 something years at this point. I'm no clearer on what God is than I was when I started, but I do know that God is, because I've had experiences where God has like shown up in my life and helped me. You may call it something else. I don't care what you call it. But the point is, I have to tap into that power, that source, because that's the only thing that's going to get me out of here. That's the only thing. And that's what these guys were trying to say. Going to meetings does not get you out of here. In fact, it gets you more spinning in here. We have to get out of here in order to be in recovery, because the goal, by the way, in all of this, they talk about this in step 12, right? Having had a spiritual experience as a result of working these steps. Hold on, I'm going to say it correctly because I don't want to mess it up. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Please note, they do not say, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we felt great and happily ever after. We were thin now and everything was wonderful. Never in that book do they say that. You know why? Because we're not getting well in order to get well. Being well and happy and joyous and free are happy byproducts of this work. The actual goal of this work is to get all the shit cleared out so that you can do the job that God put you here to do, which begins with start helping other addicts, which is why we are here today. Because I started feeling that connection starting to fray because I'm so busy and important doing busy and important things. And I started being like, why do I feel? Because I have to use what I've got or it's going to corrode. It's like, British people know about this. You have a well, right? So like you have your well on your property and the water just sits there. It gets grimy and moldy and mossy on top, right? You have to keep spilling out the water, pouring it out, keeping it moving so that the water's fresh. My water was getting a little mossy, you know what I mean? So like I told my sponsor, like, I think I need to do these workshops again. It's not for you, doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. Because I need to be doing the thing that I am put here for. I am not, that's ultimately the ultimate spiritual understanding, that I came in here to look good and feel good. Now I come in here because I have a job to do. God didn't put me on this earth by accident. I have something I'm supposed to do here. And every morning I have to get up and report for duty. And if I'm playing around with food, or I'm obsessing about how my body looks, or I'm in some kind of self-pity or resentment or human bullshit that always comes up for us, I'm not able to see my job and do it. So ultimately what they're telling us is we need something bigger than us to get in here and fix us, and so that we can actually live. And part of living is being of use and of service to other people. Period. I know it's very unglamorous, but it's just what it is. And ultimately, I find that all the things I wanted, that I thought I wanted, that I was resentful about not getting and would eat over, are not the things I actually needed. And then I find out that I needed for something completely different, and it's 10 times more fulfilling than anything I could have thought of for myself. That's the game. I have to stop acting as if I'm the boss of my own life, because when I try to do that, I end up eating. I have to get out of here. So that said, I want to talk for a second about the experience of step one, personal, and then hopefully we have a little bit of time, like 5 more minutes before I'll take some questions. So let me just read step one so that we all know what it is. So we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. There's a dash between there, by the way. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, dash, that our lives had become unmanageable. So that dash is very telling, because a lot of us think our lives are unmanageable because we're powerless over alcohol. Mm-hmm. Our lives are unmanageable and we try to manage them with alcohol, and then we're powerless. We are powerless the whole time. We are always powerless. Our lives, we try to manage our lives by ourselves. We fail consistently. We get pissed off, so we drink. I don't drink because my life is hard. I use my life being hard as an excuse, but that's not why, because my life is just as unmanageable when I'm not drinking. That's why I drink. I have to recognize that not only am I powerless over alcohol, that when I introduce whatever substance or behavior, whatever, into my system, I am powerless over that, and B, powerless to manage my own life. Because if I still think that I can manage either one of those things, my life or my food / body / anything, fucked. That's it. We have to understand that. And sometimes we want to understand that. We want to understand that. We understand it intellectually, but we're just not there yet. And sometimes we have to do some research. When I first got into meetings, I had no idea what anybody was talking about, but I understood that if I told these people, that if I really was honest with them about the way that I ate, they would get it. I just intuited this. I didn't actually talk to any of them, but I got it. So I kept going to meetings. And I remember hearing that word powerless. And I was like, well, if I'm powerless, nothing I can do anyway, right? So I'll just eat. What am I supposed to do? So I started to eat because there was nothing I could do about it. And then I decided to gather my resources again, because the fortunate / unfortunate consequence of me eating how I want to eat is I put weight on my body. And I'm a very vain person, so that doesn't work for me. So, okay, I'm going to gather my resources and try to lose weight. And mind you, I'd been going to meetings at this point. I'd been hearing the word powerless. What I didn't realize is not just that I'm powerless over eating, is that I'm powerless over stopping eating. Mark Twain said that quitting cigarettes is easy. I've done it 100 times, right? I thought that I could stop when I wanted to. That's powerlessness. And until I saw the fact that not only could I not stop, but it just got worse. That I did things I didn't even want to be doing. That was when I started to really understand what powerlessness was. It wasn't just the phenomenon of craving. It wasn't just the fact that I ate too much. It was that I ate too much even when I didn't want to eat too much, that I had no choice. It takes what it takes for everyone to get there. Some people get it the very first time they walk into a meeting. Not everyone does, unfortunately. What I will say is that it took me 2 years of research to really internalize and understand this, to the point where one night I sat in a meeting and people were talking and had sounded like they had what I wanted. And I thought to myself, maybe if I do what they do, I'll have what they have. Like it sounds very obvious. It took me 2 years to get there. And that night I was willing. And that was the beginning. I have no idea why it was that specifically. And it sounds like it was an aha, but it was actually the culmination of 2 years of understanding how this thing really works. So what I can tell you is, if you're not willing, ask to be willing. And if you don't want to be willing yet, ask to want to be willing. Because there's no forcing understanding of something. I can understand it intellectually, but until I buy it in here, it's not going to go. Because otherwise, if I don't really buy that this is the situation, why would I ever do the rest of these steps? It's only when I understand that this is a real issue of life and death, that I will never be able to stop on my own, that I will not be able to run my life on my own. That's when I will be willing to do this. I bless you all that you get it right now, if you don't have it already. I bless you. And when sponsees call me and they tell me, and I always say, and this sounds like harsh, but it's true, I bless you with enough pain to make you willing right now. Because the bottom line is, we're addicts, right? The pain of changing has to be less than the pain of staying the same. So I bless all of you with enough pain to make you willing to do what needs to be done to save your life. And I mean that in the best way. So ultimately, I need to understand the mechanism and understand what I'm working with in order to find the solution. And Einstein said, we can't solve a problem with the same thinking that created it. My thinking is the culprit in my addiction. Sure, you could say, oh, there's a genetic factor, there's upbringing, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. Okay. We could waste 20 years of our lives talking about why I'm an addict. You want to, we can go back and talk about my great grandfather. Why? The fact is, I'm an addict and I need a solution. So let's just focus on that. Let's just get to the solution. So I'm going to stop now and let's open the floor for questions.